Hey everybody, what is up? It is Dr. Vibe, the host and producer of the Sports Vibe, and also host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, co-host and producer of the weekly broadcast on Monday nights at 9 p.m. of a proposal for a White House Council for boys and men, and also the host and producer of Do You Know What Time It Is on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But it's sports vibe time tonight. We have not had him on for a minute, but he is back in the house. Brenden is back in the house. So everyone pay attention. What is up? And I love new do. New
Yeah,
do.
I cut it a little bit. It got a little bit warmer, so I had to trim it up a little bit.
Oh, very nice. What have you been up to? Like we haven't had it on for a bit. What's been going on?
I just fell down a basketball hole, college basketball, the March Madness, NBA. I actually just came back from a basketball analytics summit here in Chapel Hill. So yeah, I've been nerding out the last the last couple of weeks. I've been enjoying it.
A basketball analytics summit.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Wow, that's a whole other conversation in itself. But let's roll back of it. It has been a while. Your thoughts, since we're basically going to talk about hoops tonight, what were your thoughts about Duke's victory in the NCAA?
It's hard being a lifelong.
I know it's hard for you because you're a Tar Heel fan, and I like Mike Krzyzewski. So I want to hear you. I want to hear you out on this.
It was pretty tough. It was pretty tough. And I also kind of felt like I was robbed of the Kentucky Duke rematch. That's what I was really gunning for. I know Wisconsin. They did everything that you needed to do to win. There were some spotty calls there at the end of that game, but at the end of the day, Bo Ryan and his people won it. They got to the finals. They just weren't quite enough. They had the lead late in that game, and they just couldn't hold it out. Grayson Allen.
That guy.
Absolutely fantastic. And people around these ACC parts have been knowing about him for a while. He has just never been able to kind of put it together. He had made some poor decisions, fouls, and he just looked like a freshman. In all honesty, whenever he would go out there, he looked like someone that was inexperienced. But his talent is undeniable. He's got a nice jump shot. He's very, very athletic, and he seems to have a good idea of what he wants to do and how he wants to impose as well. So he's going to be fun moving forward for the rest of us in the ACC.
Well, I tell you, not you talk about his jump shot, but what he did going inside.
Absolutely, he's very, very quick. I think he had tested out as the highest vertical on that team. He's an absolute athlete, and he's a stud around the rim. No shortage of courage from him. I mean, the fact that he wasn't a major contributor for most of that season, he had no problem stepping up in the biggest lights, the national championship, the biggest stage. Absolutely fantastic for him. And then Tyus Jones closed the show. It really was a testament to how deep they were. I know they only had 8 scholarship players, but the fact that Jahlil Okafor didn't have a good game and they were still able to stay in that game until Okafor kind of found himself late, had some crucial offensive rebounds and some putbacks. I mean, that team is what you want in a national championship. You're going to have 3 guys coming from that squad. They're going to be lottery picks between Tyus Jones, Justice Winslow, and Jahlil Okafor. So that's what you want as a representative of the best team in the country. I think the championship got it right.
Yeah, and it's funny. Everyone criticizes John Calipari about freshmen, but look at Duke's team.
Exactly.
They had so many freshmen on it.
You didn't hear any conversation about one and done's ruining college basketball when it was Mike Krzyzewski and the Duke Blue Devils and the Prestige and yada, whatever. UNC's coming back next year. It'll be fine.
Good stuff. Well, let's get rocking and rolling. This is another one of your favorite times of the year because from NCAA right into the NBA playoffs. So let's break it down. So we'll go series by series here. For most of the first games have been played, some haven't, but want to get your take on the first games of the ones that have been played and what you're predicting for the rest of the series. So let's first start off with the battle of Toronto versus Washington, more like the battle between Masai Ujiri and Paul Pierce.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk in the news cycles recently about whether or not Toronto has it coming from Paul Pierce and the school of the truth, as I like to call it. But look, they brought him on for this. Washington Wizards brought him on to be that guiding force, to be that veteran leadership presence. That team is as talented as they are still pretty inexperienced when it comes to winning championships, and Paul Pierce is one of the best ones that you can bring on. it'll be interesting to see what happens in this series. These teams actually kind of mirror one another for a little while. The Raptors and Wizards through December 29th were 46-15. Through December 30th to the end of the regular season, they were 49-54. Both of them really, really struggled kind of coming down the stretch. I think you kind of saw the inexperience of having something expected of you. Toronto kind of surprised a lot of teams last year. Kyle Lowry had his best season ever, and they just kind of jumped up on top of people. DeMar DeRozan was a little bit better than I think that people gave him credit for. And suddenly you had one of the best backcourts in the league in Canada, and no one kind of saw it coming. Well, this year, they weren't sneaking up on people. And I think that kind of caught up with them. Same thing with the Wizards. You know, it was the young backcourt of Wall and Beal and everything. You know, everything is promised. There has so much potential. Well, this year, people were expecting more and more of them. So I think that added pressure maybe caught up with them later on in that season. It'll absolutely wear on you.
I think one of the interesting things from game one is the best player on the court was 37 years old. Lowry was horrible.
Yeah, I mean, look, I picked the Wizards in this series. I think that the Wizards are going to win. I think that Beal and Wall, they'll find it together. Otto Porter gave them some really, really good minutes, especially late in that game. That it went into overtime. It was never really it wasn't a great game, but it was a quality game to see exactly what you had out of both teams. Lowry really, really struggled. I don't think he's going to have another game like that. I just don't. But who's going to be the best guy on the court on a regular basis? Is it going to be Paul Pierce? They interviewed him right after the game. He says, you know what? I was just resting during the regular season. This is my time to shine. This is why they brought me here. And I'm going to go ahead and show up and show out. I like the Wizards mostly because of that and the fact that they have two guys that they feel comfortable throwing the ball into in the post. I know that neither Nene or will be the superstar that you're going to look to, but I think that's really, really important. The fact that you can have those possessions where you just dump it down and let them work. I think that while Toronto is deep, Dwayne Casey had to use 15 different lineups during the regular season for a team that really brought back most of its core. They're still trying to figure out and look for who's gonna fill that role at number 3. They played with Vasquez there, Terrence Ross. Toronto was still very much trying to find itself as the season ended, and that's never a position you want to be in.
Well, I think one of the difficulties too is that, as you mentioned, Martin Gortat, Washington has a big man inside. Toronto has never been really an established inside game, and playoff time, you need that inside presence, and I don't think they have someone dominant there. And you know, the jump shooting, they rely so much on the outside shooting, and shooting wise, both teams were horrible yesterday. Outside of Pierce, no one really shot well.
Well, yeah. See, Toronto, the thing that they had going for them was the fact that they had Valanciunas, who was having a career year at the center position. I thought that you were going to see much more of him. I know Lowry and DeMar DeRozan get a lot of the credit. Again, very much like the Wizards, the backcourt gets a lot of the credit, but it's really Amir Johnson and Valanciunas that gives this team a little bit something different than a lot of other squads can register. I didn't see quite enough of them going and looking for him, and I think that'll obviously take away, alleviate some of the pressure from that backcourt in terms of its ability to score. Toronto struggled with playing defense pretty much all year. You're not going to come to the postseason and become a different team. They're going to have to put up points if they're going to want to win and move on to the next round.
Well, it's going to be interesting. If Toronto loses this series, be interesting because they just re-signed Casey, I believe, to an extension to his contract in the offseason. But the funny thing is, Masai Ujiri did not hire Dwayne Casey.
And that's always a very, very difficult thing when your front office isn't completely aligned. When you have if you're a GM, you're going to want your coach in there with a shared philosophy. And so that was the really big question. Now, when Casey and the Toronto Raptors had a phenomenal year last year, a surprising year, if you were to ask me, in terms of how well they played, how many wins they accrued. That is a very, very interesting thing. If now that they have pressure on them, now that they have expectations, if they fall short of them, how exactly is that dynamic going to work?
Well, one other last thing, of course, it seems now the regular thing is Masai has to utter a curse word before the series starts, and he picked very interesting audience yesterday because the commissioner of the NBA was right there when he did it.
Yeah, I guess he's the GM bad boy. I mean, I don't know why this has become a thing, but apparently 4-letter words uttered before the game is his pep talk. So
There you
good
go.
for him.
Well, I hope it doesn't put too much added pressure on the team. It'd be very interesting to know what the players on the team think about that. But we'll move on. Next up, Golden State and the New Orleans Pelicans. Give us your take. An interesting game yesterday, by the way.
That was an interesting game. Golden State pretty much had control of that game pretty much all throughout, and then the Pelicans just kind of kept moving their way back into it. They would be 20 points, and then it'd be 15, then be 13, then be 10, and then it's back up to 15. But by the end of the game, they had battled their way back into it. They've got to have a lot more in terms of the backcourt presence. They need more from Gordon. Drew Holiday is just recently back from injury, and I think that's throwing them a little bit off because Tyreek Evans has been running the point for them pretty much since All-Star break. So I think that throws them off a little bit in terms of what each player gives them and what each player really means to that team. If I'm the coach, I want Holiday to also, as the point guard, as a guy that's had some years in this league, I want him to communicate to Anthony Davis. We need you aggressive all the way throughout. You saw Anthony Davis, especially late. He was very aggressive in the paint, catching the ball, making a move, making a strong move, and going up. He's very, very capable of doing that. Even though he's not a great post player, he can still, if he faces up, he's still a very, very real threat. But you can see that through the first 3 quarters. You need a guy that's going to understand what the role is. And look, he's very, very young. He came out after his freshman year, so we've seen how dynamic he can be as an athlete, as a player, but now is winning time, and he doesn't know anything about that. He can't know anything about that because this is his first time. This is his first foray into the playoffs. But you're going to want to see more aggressiveness early from him. You look at his finishing numbers, 31 and multiple rebounds. Absolutely fantastic, but you need to be a presence from beginning to end for your team because you are the sole superstar on this squad. And if you all have any chance of winning, you have to be a dominant personality on and off the court the entire duration of the contest.
How many games, Golden State?
I'm going to say 5. I'm going to say that they're going to go to New Orleans, that the Pelicans are going to win that game 3, the first game back in New Orleans, but no more than 5. If I had to pick between 4 and 6, I'd go 4. But I think the Pelicans got something up their sleeve. They got a little bit of voodoo, and they'll come up with a win somewhere in this. But they're not ready. This is the baptism by fire that you want to see. This is a young team learning to win. You know, Golden State was here a few years ago. Now it's New Orleans time. You got to go to the well and be denied. So this is their time.
Just rolling back, you had Washington over Toronto games.
Give me Washington over Toronto in 7. I think this is going to, these teams really, really remind me of one another. I mean, it's going to be nip and tuck. I think the first game going to overtime only solidified more what I thought that these two teams are very, very evenly matched. But I think that the best player overall in the series is going to be John Wall. I physically don't think that Paul Pierce can physically do it for the duration of a long series like this. But I think that John Wall should be and is the best player in this series.
All right, let's move forward. Got the return of Derrick Rose last night, especially in the second quarter. He was magical. So what do you have to say about game 1, Bulls and Bucks, and the rest of the series?
Very surprising, actually. When I was thinking about this series, I thought this was going to be colloquially, this is kind of referred to as the NBA TV series, the one they're going to kind of cast aside because it's not going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of low possessions. It's not going to be up and down. The first game was anything but. A lot of shot making from both teams, up and down. It was a lot of fun. And the only thing more surprising than the pace of the game and the style of the game was Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose was absolutely fantastic. 20-plus points, 6 or 7 assists in limited minutes. He looked, I'm scared to say it, but he looked like the old Derrick Rose. He looked like that guy that was incredibly explosive.
How long for?
Exactly. And that's the thing, because I had honestly gotten to the point where I felt that Chicago might have been better off if he had just shut it down again, because him coming back and forth, it really, it changes the rotation. Aaron Brooks starting, not starting, the roles that they have for their point guard. I wasn't sure if it was really in their best interest for him to come back late in the season, what was going to happen. But to his credit, he looked absolutely fantastic. And look, if Derrick Rose has superstar minutes in him, even if he's not playing the full, starters minutes that you would normally have, if he's got 25 to 30 minutes in him that are at superstar caliber, suddenly this Chicago team looks way, way different. This Bulls team was already really deep. They added Gasol. Noah has started to come back around. Jimmy Butler he's got most players locked up pretty much. And you add that to Mirotic, who would if he were playing larger minutes, would be a Rookie of the Year candidate. He's that good. Tony Snell started to give them something. Like, this is a deeper, more offensively minded team that Chicago has had in the Derrick Rose, Tom Thibodeau tenure. So if Rose can come back to getting that superstar talent, this team, I mean, the sky is absolutely the limit. And by sky, I mean the finals, beating LeBron and the Cavs and competing for a championship.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, keep a watch.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked a little bit about Duke earlier. Justice Winslow actually reminds me a lot of Jimmy Butler in terms of his tenacity. He's got a very strict edge to him. You see it every time that he plays, and he's just a monster, an absolute savage every time he touches the ball. Jimmy Butler, and on top of his offensive maturation, defensively, he's still a real problem. So to have that kind of perimeter defender on your team at all times, that's something special.
Excellent. How many games and who's going to win it?
I'm going to go with the Bulls in 6. I don't know if Rose is going to be able to have one of those games again. And so call me a skeptic. You can go ahead and color me a skeptic now, because I've seen enough of him getting injured or just being ineffective. He had a 5-for-5 stretch in the second quarter. He scored or assisted on 12 of their first 14 points. So I don't know if he's going to have another one of those type of games. So I think Milwaukee, and credit to Jason Kidd, by the way. I mean, this has been one of the unsung stories of the NBA throughout, the fact that this Bucks team is not only making the playoffs, but remember, they traded their best player. Brandon Knight was their most effective, most consistent player. They had to trade him at the deadline because they didn't think they'd be able to re-sign him, picked up Michael Carter-Williams from the 76ers. But this team changed, and they still made the playoffs. So kudos to Jason Kidd, but I don't think that they'll be able to, especially this young team. And without Jabari Parker, by the way, without their Rookie of the Year candidate in their own right, I don't think they'll be able to challenge the Bulls for a real series. But 6 games, I think the Bulls will pull it out.
All right. Rockets and Mavericks. James Harden keeps on firing. What do you got?
Man. I like James Harden, and if he won the MVP, I wouldn't be upset, and I wouldn't be surprised. But these referees have to understand what he does on a regular basis. The fact that he's drawing contact, and it's pretty obvious that he's doing this, and he's been doing it for so long that this has now become the James Harden thing. But they've got to stop rewarding him for doing this. I mean, I understand that the Rockets ended up finishing the game. They won it. The Mavericks weren't shooting for the win or anything, but consistent foul calls late in that game, it changes the entire tempo. And I don't mean to harp on the referees, because both of these teams are really, really good. And both of them deserve to have their own shine, but goodness gracious, there has to become a point where referees stop rewarding him for some of these antics.
Doesn't sound like you're a huge Harden fan.
I mean, look, I was wrong about him. I didn't think that he'd be this good. He's a top 5 player and was absolutely fantastic for that team that missed not only Dwight Howard, but Terrence Jones missed time. Monta Eunice, their backup power forward, he's done for the season. Patrick Beverly, their starting point guard, he's done. I mean, this team underwent a lot of changes, and the only constant was James Harden. And sometimes it was high pick and roll with 4 guys on the perimeter, and he was just kind of finding his way. So I don't mean to take anything from him, but there comes a point where you just have to look at it and like, hey, everyone knows this is what James Harden does. Stop rewarding him. This is the postseason. Stop rewarding him for those antics. You have to kind of draw the line as a referee.
Good stuff. Well, who do you got in that series and how many games?
Okay, I'm most of my picks are chalk. I'm going to go with the Mavs in that one. There's something about it. I don't really know what I know. And they lost the first game, and I'm very much a proponent of he who bets when the loss is in sight goes home broke, me and Knight. I get it.
Wow.
But Rajon Rondo, I believe in Rajon Rondo. That's what it's going to come down to. I believe in Rondo getting back to Rondo in this. When this team made the acquisition of Rajon about midway, right before the trade deadline, their offensive efficiency, their points per possession went down. Their defensive efficiency went up a little bit, but their net rating overall went down. They weren't the same team once they picked up Rondo. It changed things. He's not the jump shooter that Jameer Nelson is, or JJ Barea. So it changed the spacing of the entire squad. But I think that he's the type of player that can take over games. And I feel like superstars win playoff games more often than not. And there's something about this team that I got to go with them over the Rockets, especially because Montezumas and Patrick Beverley are out. That changes that rotation completely. Yeah, go ahead and give me the Mavericks in 7.
Whoa, well, you know what? We got to get you back on regularly because that is the pick of the night so far. So let's keep on going. The game was played this afternoon. Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics.
First, let me just say congratulations to the Boston Celtics. No one thought this was going to happen. If someone tells you that they did, they're absolutely lying. Brad Stevens has done a magnificent job in Boston. They traded away their 2 best players. I was just talking about Rondo. Jeff Green is now with Memphis. They traded away their 2 best players because the thinking was that they were going to be bad and pick up a lottery pick and keep going. They have the potential to have 5 first-round picks in the next 2 years, depending on how things shape out with these compensation picks. But they've done a masterful job, and they've done it in a little bit of a different sort of way. They've got really, really good perimeter defenders, and you saw it today, especially in the first half. Jay Crowder, Marcus Smart, and Avery Bradley are all quality on-ball perimeter defenders. Usually teams don't have 3 guys that they can feel comfortable rolling out there at any time and stopping the opposition. And with an ISO-heavy team like Cleveland, with Kyrie and LeBron, you're seeing them match up against the NBA's absolute best and do a really good job. Jay Crowder went through like a 2 or 3 possession where he guarded Kevin Love, Kyrie, and LeBron and did an absolute masterful job of it. That said, they ain't beating the Cavs. Like that's not gonna happen. Like you can go ahead and dead that. Anything that you were thinking, it's not gonna happen. It's gonna be 4 games because they got the best player in the planet on their squad. It's really that simple. Like there's a lot of different numbers I could give you about Cleveland and how good they've been since the All-Star break. The second most wins. Whatever. No, they're just better. That's all.
Okay. Any game count?
4. It's gonna be 4.
All right.
Yeah, it's gonna be 4.
We'll get on that one quick. And I guess the 2 last matchups we're going to talk about, very interesting matchups from the Western Conference: Trailblazers and the Grizzlies.
Yeah, it's funny because the Grizzlies, their last regular season game, Mike Conley and Tony Allen, their starting backcourt, didn't play. And they wouldn't have played, and the coach said they wouldn't have played even if they had been a playoff game because they just generally couldn't go. Marc Gasol, he's been banged up as well. And they're still the more healthy team in this situation. Wesley Matthews is done with an Achilles. LaMarcus Aldridge, everybody knows he somehow dislocated his finger, but is still playing. I don't know what's going on there. Nick Batum got a knee injury. This team is really, really been struggling, but and with their struggles mean their offensive production has gone down as well. And so this was already an offensive team. So once you remove some of their offensive firepower, their defense was already pretty lackluster. I think the Grizzlies are going to win. I think it'll still be close because you got Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge, who are still 2 superstars in this league. But I think the Grizz, the Grindhouse, I think they'll mow them down eventually. Give me the Memphis in 6.
Okay. And I guess the most contested matchup of all in the first round. But you know what? Let me go back a bit. You were talking about Brad Stevens. Heard a very interesting take by a sportscaster on the radio today saying that they could see Brad Stevens coming back to the NCAA. And just out of curiosity, if and when Mike Krzyzewski ever quits,
wow,
they could see Duke going after Brad Stevens.
Wow. That's very, very interesting. The who replaces Mike Krzyzewski conversation has been had multiple times around the North Carolina area because Carolina had to go through it with Dean Smith to Bill Guthridge to Matt Daugherty and finally to Roy Williams. And there was a bit of a upheaval between Smith and Roy Williams. Mike Krzyzewski built that Duke program, and so it's a little bit difficult for me to even fathom because he's been the coach at Duke as long as I've been living. So it's a little bit tough for me to even think about who would replace him. I would think that it would be a former player or coach,
I can't see
like a Bobby Hurley, Tommy Amaker. But that's just a guess, and no one really knows what that team is going to look like, or even what Duke is going to look like in terms of recruiting. That's not an easy place to recruit. That's not an easy place to win, because you have to have a certain type of student athlete that's ready and capable of stepping into that Duke somewhat pseudo Ivy League type of status. So that's a very interesting take. I hadn't heard that one.
Well, Krzyzewski's not going to retire anywhere soon. Like the man is 68 years old. He looks like he's 38 years old. But the thing is, getting back to Brad Stevens, he's only 38 years old.
Yeah. He's extremely young, but people love him. I mean, and the things that they love about him are the basketball. Like he's such a basketball guy. I guess the best way to put it is you see the players that he's done it with, the kind of cast-offs. Tyler Zeller used to be on the Cavs. He's there. Marcus Smart, he had his problems coming into the draft. Evan Turner, even the 76ers didn't really want him, and now he's turned into one of their better players. Brad Stevens has done a lot after timeouts. He's one of the best coaches. I mean, kudos to him. He's a lot of fun to watch. Just in terms of being a basketball nut, he's a lot of fun to watch.
Well, the thing is, he's very much into the analytics too. But they're just saying that, and you look at, he took Butler to the NCAA finals 2 years in a row.
Right, and that's can sometimes be difficult to figure out, is this coach good? Is this coach bad? But watching what he can do with, no offense to them, but players that are not the most talented in their arena, be it at Butler or be it this Boston Celtics team, and the fact that he can be as successful as he is a testament to him and his philosophy.
Yeah, and remember when he got hired by Danny Ainge, people going, what?
An absolute shock, especially because he not only is he 38, he looks like he's super young. Like he's, you compare him with like a Popovich or something like that, and you're just like, nah, they can't have the same job. There's no way.
Well, speaking about Pops, big games coming up between the Spurs and the Clippers. This could be an NBA final. Let alone just a first round of the Western Conference. And I really have a really funny feeling about the Spurs losing that last game to New Orleans. I think that's going to catch up to haunt them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was surprised that they lost that game, to be honest with you. The Pelicans and OKC were battling for that last 8th position. The Spurs really wanted that game. They wanted it for positioning. They wanted it so they wouldn't have to play a team like the Clippers in the first round. And the Pelicans took it away from them. And that was a little surprising. But if you look, the Spurs won 21 of their last 25 games. You look at their offensive efficiency, their defensive efficiency, their turnover percentage, all of those look almost identical to when they won the championship last year. So it took them a while to get here, but the Spurs are here. They're very much like Jason or Freddy Krueger. Like you whisper around a campfire about these guys. Like they're that kind of scary. And I know that it's just Tony Parker. He's getting older, and Tim Duncan's 39, who was arguably they're probably their best player this year. I don't know, man. One of these days we're gonna bet on the Spurs one too many times and they're gonna lose. But man, I'm gonna have to ride this ship until it fades, because I just don't believe in the Clippers. I really don't. And they're super talented. One of the most fun, offensively efficient teams that you have. But two things bother me. One, their record against teams with records of 500 or better, it's pretty average. And they can't seem to score in the half court when games slow down, when possessions get more valuable, when the pace slows down. They seem to struggle in the half court. It's when it's not high flying and it's not, in the open court, and it's not fun basketball, and you just kind of have to run things. You just have to be better than the other guy. It's scary. Now, look, Chris Paul, the MVP race was full, and he didn't have the kind of start to the season that he would have needed. But, man, he was an absolute monster, especially when Blake Griffin went down for the weeks that he did. Kept that team in it. DeAndre Jordan picked up a lot of the slack. One of the defensive players of the year candidates between he and Draymond Green more than likely. I just don't believe in them. I really, really don't, especially with they don't have a ton of wing depth either to play defense or to score from. Give me the Spurs, and I'll just rock with the old guys.
How many games?
Give me 6. Give me the Spurs and 6.
So just want to do a little bit drill down more on that series. For the Clippers to win, who's going to be the key player?
Well, if the Clippers are going to win, they're going to need more wing support, because I'm already suspecting Blake Griffin and Chris Paul are going to have monster games. They're going to have monster series. So I'm kind of taking them out of it. I'm trying to look for the next guy that they're going to need. DeAndre Jordan really needs to be able to stay on the court. Now, his free throws problems could present a bit of a problem if there's ever a Hacker Jordan situation and the Spurs need to catch up late in the game. That could be an issue. It might not. It might. You just have to look at it. Jamal Crawford went down for them late. He got hurt. He's really, really important for them. I know he doesn't start, but he's just a gun that they can bring off the bench and just kind of infuse them with scoring, infuse them with ball handling, especially when Chris Paul needs a blow. So that's who I'm looking at. If Jamal Crawford can have a big series, an efficient 15 points, few assists, if he can do that, then they're going to beat the Spurs. But I think the Spurs in 6. I feel confident in that.
Excellent. Any other comments you want to make about the NBA playoffs?
I mean, this is a lot of fun. The Western Conference is, I mean, we just talked about the Clippers and the Spurs. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are a lot of really, really good teams playing one another. The Rockets and the Mavs. I mean, I'm picking the Mavs because I think that's going to be a fantastic series. Watching Golden State, I think they're going to beat the Pelicans pretty quickly, but watching Golden State is going to be a lot of fun because I picked them early on in the season because they were able to do something that's very, very difficult. They were able to keep the defensive philosophies that they got under Mark Jackson, but then incorporate the new offensive stuff that they got from Steve Kerr. And so suddenly their offensive efficiency jumped, and now they're top 4 in both points per possession and points against per possession. It's going to be fun to watch them try to learn how to win, to learn how to get to that next step. Now, if they can do that without having to play the Spurs, all the better. But they've only got one superstar, and Steph Curry is going to be on Steph Curry's shoulders. I know Klay Thompson had a phenomenal April, but it's all going to be on Steph Curry in terms of whether or not they're able to reach that elite status.
Okay, I won't ask you on who's going to win it all right now, but who do you have coming out of each conference?
I'm going to have to go with the Cavs coming out of the East, primarily because they got LeBron. I mean, LeBron is still the best player in the world. Kyrie Irving, you saw what LeBron's turned into that point guard. He's turned into the point guard for the team. And you see what Kyrie can do as that off guard. He has no problem at all playing that off guard role and does it to perfection. Now, they're going to need Kevin Love to be consistent. I don't know what consistent looks like for him. Maybe it looks like you're more on the offensive rebounding and you're more kind of a glorified hustle guy to the point where you're cleaning up those offensive rebounds. Tristan Thompson did a fantastic job with it too. I don't know if you can really have Love in that role for a large period of time because he's been a 3-point shooter for them. And if you're on the offensive rebounding, you're going to have to be closer. So I don't know how they have fixed the spacing. But I think that team's going to come out of the East after it's all said and done. Not incredibly deep, but I feel like they do it because of LeBron. And then the West, the Warriors have been the best team in the league from wire to wire. That has to mean something, so I'm going to go with them.
Excellent. Well, he is back. NBA styling and profiling. It is good and great to have him back. Hopefully we can get him back within the week because these series will certainly progress. One last take on the NBA. Do you feel there needs to be a realignment of the playoff system?
I've been fighting it. I've been pretty much been like, no, it needs to stay the way it is. But the East, where I thought that eventually the East would kind of surge back into the league with early draft picks and their maturation. I thought that the East would get back to being as strong as the West. It really hasn't, and it hasn't been like that for a few years. So I wouldn't mind actually if they changed it, especially when you look at how successful the college ranks are. With you just put whoever the best teams are, you just knock it out like that, and that would be interesting. And that would take away maybe it would mean that the that the Nets weren't in, but it would mean Oklahoma City does get in. And I think that on its face, that kind of makes natural sense. So, yeah, I'd rather if they just went 1 through 16 and didn't bother so much with the conferences.
All right, good stuff. Finish another episode of the Sports Vibe. We are going to be back soon. But Brenden, how can people catch you?
The easiest way for it is to catch me on Twitter. Is at WBHU alum. That's at WBHUALUM. You can also catch me on iTunes with my podcast. He's the producer. I'm the host. And hopefully catch me here at the Sports Vibe. Oh, you can also catch me at the Sports Shop Radio, which is a AM radio talk show on 9 to 11 a.m. Saturday. That's 620 a.m., 993 FM, and 96.5 FM in the North Carolina RDU area. Or you can just go to the sportsshopradio.com and click listen from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday.
Excellent. Well, another great Sports Vibe show. I'm your host and producer of the Sports Vibe, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, host and producer of Do You Know What Time It Is, host and co-producer of the weekly podcast on Monday evenings at 8 p.m. for a proposed president's White House Commission on Men and Boys. As I always like to say, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith. Thanks for listening and enjoy the rock. Enjoy NBA hoops, or as they say, enjoy the ball nights. Bye-bye.